Welcome to the Beyond Jiu Jitsu podcast. I was waiting for Adam to interrupt because every second episode or
I
so,
usually hijack the intro.
Yeah, so I was like looking, waiting, but he was distracted on the laptop. So
I was looking at Reddit. No, it wasn't. I'm only half invested here.
Yeah. Welcome to the podcast. This is episode number 20, and we've been talking up this episode for a while. So now it's time to deliver the goods. This is our second Q&A episode featuring Ask a Black Belt.
Yep, where I'm going to try answer your Jiu-Jitsu related or sometimes not Jiu-Jitsu related questions.
Yeah, we have a mixed bag of questions today, some pretty good ones, but just as a bit of housekeeping, if you want to submit a question to the show, you can do so over on our Instagram, on our link tree. We have a survey there that you can fill out and submit the question to the show. So
sorry to interrupt. Anyone wondering what a link tree is? Because I didn't know, but people probably know that you can't really share links and stuff on Instagram, but you
only get to share one.
Yeah. So you can have what's called a link tree, and you click on that and it's essentially takes you to a page that then has all the other links. So if you click on our link tree, it'll take you somewhere where then you can click on our Patreon, on the Google form to submit questions, and it's all the links in one spot. So
talking to the people under 30 that are listening, you'll know exactly
what a link tree is.
But for people of Adam's vintage, there's your explanation.
Vintage.
It's good drop, Adam. All right, so that is how you submit a question to the show. But let's just dive straight into it.
Yeah,
straight into the Q&A. First question comes from Aaron, as is he's known. He is a purple belt that trains at Alliance, and he wants to know what type of underwear you wear.
Oh, nice.
No,
crotchless.
Arseless chaps. Aaron actually asks, do you have any competition underwear or any superstitions, which I'm assuming he means around competing.
Yeah, well, I mean, first, I'm not weird, so I don't wear underwear, right?
Exclusively?
Do people wear underwear? No. It's actually in the rules. You
have to wear underwear?
Yeah.
Wow.
Which, I mean, as you should, I think, right? Would be.
Well, that could be a way to throw off your opponent, right? If you rock up, no, legit, if you rocked up without underwear on and then I don't know, jiu-jitsu happens and then I don't know. This is getting weird.
What? Or just the sound of your balls slapping against your thigh while you're trying to wrestle.
That's so gay. And then this is difficult because I mean, for those that train jiu-jitsu, try to talk to family or friends that don't, and then it always comes up like it's a bit gay. And you're like, no, it's not gay. It's not gay. But then when we open with fucking ball slapping,
there's one of the first ever jiu-jitsu memes. Sure, you've probably seen it, being under 30 and spending so much time online. But I don't know if you've seen the one, I think it's Shogun and Vanderlei Silva, and it's just a photo of them training.
Yeah.
And it's one of them on the other's back, but the photo's taken while they're, whatever they're doing, specific training or mid-roll or something, but they're both smiling is when the photo was taken. And them being MMA fighters, right? Very common that they just have the shorts or the little, I guess we would refer to them as those tight short shorts. They're called sunga in Brazil. But being MMA fighters, they're often training without shirts on, right? And the meme is jiu-jitsu. It's only gay if you make eye contact. I don't know if you've seen that one.
I've seen that. I know what image you're talking about. There's so many others. There's a good meme template, like a format where it's like what my mum thinks I do, what my friends think I do, what I actually do. That there's always there's one floating around with jiu-jitsu, and it's always being gay.
Anyway, back to Aaron's question. I don't have any superstitions, but the fact that he actually mentioned underwear is quite funny because when I'm not superstitious, but I definitely have a bit of a routine, I guess you could say, if I'm competing at any sort of competition where I think it's a bit more important. Things like, I like to wear not necessarily my favorite gi, but I'll find the gi that is the most competition appropriate. And what I mean by that is, you're not trying to break the rules, but you definitely want the the sleeves as short as possible and as tight as possible that are still within the rules to not give extra material for your opponent to grab. And in terms of underwear, any guys training would know, not even just jiu-jitsu wise, but for a lot of sports. And, you know, I assume it would be similar for women with sports bras, right? Like it can make a difference. Like if you have a woman who's got the wrong sports bra, she might just flat out say, oh, I can't go for a run because I forgot, you know, whatever, you know, sports bra or whatever that they need. It makes a difference, right? And same for guys. If you had the wrong underwear, you can't like go for a run or do jiu-jitsu, right? Like try training in a pair of boxers.
I was about to say, how big are your balls, bro?
Ken doll over here, doesn't it?
Oh, whatever. Whatever, mate. You are 6'5". I'm not making any assumptions.
But, you know, like I actually, I don't know, like, and people, this conversation comes up just in time in the gym where I've had people say to me like, man, I got these new training underwear from Under Armour or whatever. And it does make a difference. And I have in the past had like my more comfortable pair of training underwear, because sometimes you get some training underwear, man, that is just smushes stuff in all the wrong ways.
Yeah. So I have to agree. Like I'm not going to wear tighty whities or boxers when I'm training. It's going to be like those sort of like mid thigh length sport material.
Yeah.
Like, I know what you're saying.
And obviously some are going to fit you better than other brands or more comfortable or whatever. So, I mean,
are you boxers or briefs?
So in daily life, I wear boxers.
Oh, right. That's weird.
But yeah, if I'm training, like I wear those, like you said, kind of like, I guess what would look like bike shorts, I guess, kind of.
Yeah, but they're a bit shorter.
Yeah,
and like, you know, more underwear. Like I almost exclusively wear those.
Yeah, right. Yeah, well, I mean, I guess my big balls get in the way. So, I mean, I don't have a favorite pair, but obviously underwear being underwear and being a type of clothing, it's not like they last forever, right? So, I mean,
man, I have underwear. Oh fuck, I don't think I should say this, but I have underwear that I've had for like 6, 7, 8 years.
How is that even possible?
I don't know. It's pretty gross now that I'm
It'd be
talking about
rank, bro. Rank.
They're all faded and tattered and shit, holes in it. I have like a rule. My girlfriend has a rule that if she finds a piece of my clothing that has a hole in it bigger than a 20-cent piece, then she throws it out.
My wife,
I had to negotiate.
My wife does the same, but like she doesn't even have a 20-cent piece mark. It's
like
just
any hole?
Yeah, any hole.
I put my foot down, man.
And then she'll rip the hole to make it to a size where it's unusable.
Oh.
You know? So she's a bit more lenient on pajama clothes.
Right.
She'll be a bit more like, you know, or obviously sometimes you might have clothes like, you know, if it's clothes that I'm going to wear while I'm doing like renovations or maintenance or
like
something
a
on
spare
the gym.
Shirt or something, like your rag shirt. I don't really have any of those.
Like a rag shirt, yeah. But no, otherwise once it gets like a little hole, she'll kind of let me know, but then, you know, it just gets to a point where she'll rip it in half and I'm like, oh, it's gone. Yeah.
That's sad.
But yeah,
really
I do,
sad.
I don't have a favorite pair, but yeah, if I'm going to compete, I'll specifically pick out like what I know is my more comfortable pair. Sometimes I even go as far as, for no apparent reason, like I'll iron my gi before competing. There's no point to ironing it. I just
to look better.
Yeah, you know.
Oh, okay, fair enough. Yeah, no, I respect that.
Just want to look, you know, I'll usually make sure like I'm clean shaven, not all the time, but like
get a haircut.
Get a haircut. Sometimes if it's
okay, someone's going to take a photo, man.
If it's like a more important competition, I'll do those things. Like something that's maybe out of the ordinary for me is like, God, people are going to take this out of context and think I'm unhygienic, but I don't shower in the mornings. Like I shower right before I go to bed. And then unless it's like 40-degree summer, I don't really wake up sweaty and stinking, right? Like, so I don't shower first thing in the morning. You being from the Navy probably have got this super.
So in the Navy, and again, I do not want to derail this again because at the end of the last episode, if you listen to that, I derailed it with Navy shit. But in the Navy, there is like a rule that every time you get in and out of your bed or we call it a rack, in
You
and
have
out of
to
your rack, you
shower.
shower.
Yeah.
So every time you get in your, or
Isn't
like,
that just to promote the
make it
amount of
in.
time you guys have your pants off in the
No,
Navy?
no. So it's pretty much like not in and out. Like some people do in and out, but it's every time before you get in your rack, you shower. So every time.
Do you guys, I guess maybe it depends
really
on the
unhygienic
vessel.
not to, yeah.
Yeah, but do you guys share bunks in the
Okay,
sense
so
that because
they
you
actually-
have
that's a good
different
question.
shifts?
Yeah, that's called hot bunking, and it used to be a thing on Oberon class submarines. So our
Yeah,
previous
because I
type of
mean,
submarines.
real estate is at a premium, right? On a sub.
Yeah, and literally
right?
people would share racks. And
Yeah.
I mean, on submarines, people sleep in the torpedo fucking
Yeah, they
holds.
do, right? Well, I
Yeah.
mean, do they still? But I know I've
I
seen
believe
that.
so. Yeah, they put trainees there. Like when I was going through,
Terrifying.
when I was a trainee, I used to sleep on a. You can't do this anymore because it's like illegal, like it's banned because it's. Yeah, I don't want to go down that road. But when I was a trainee on a patrol boat, I slept in what's called Aussteer, which is like, for a lack of a better descriptor, our onboard, not jail, but kind of
Yeah,
jail.
right.
Like it's where we put people like you know, people that were seeking asylum and illegal
Right,
fishermen, people
right.
basically that we've detained.
Right.
They get put in a hole called Aussteer. It's not like terrible, but it's not super great.
Yeah.
And that's where I was as a trainee on a patrol boat. It's very common, but now you can't put anyone down there. That's
right.
not.
But so
detaining.
So for me, going
Yeah, keep me on
derailing.
track.
Yeah, so like I don't get up and I know some people who religiously get up and shower.
Yeah.
You know, I mean I'm like that, but at the end of the day, before
Yeah.
bed.
Well, if you only have one shower a day, it's got to be at night. I
Yeah.
don't
And
understand people that shower in the morning and not at night. To be honest, like I'm just going to go out and offend some people. If you do that, you're pretty fucking gross. I'm not going to lie. If you shower in the mornings and not at night, you've just spent the whole day sweaty, moving around, working, and then you're about to get in your bed.
And I actually can't
showering.
even sleep if I'm a little bit sticky.
No,
like I can't.
What the hell?
Sleep.
No, I can't sleep without showering. But I shower twice a day. I shower before bed and when I get up. And if I work out, sometimes 3 times.
I also, where I grew up, right, and where my parents still live, it's not, they're not tapped into the mainstream water supply, right, because they're a bit more rural. So it's just tank water. If it doesn't rain, you got no water, right? So I also grew up where when I was a kid / early teens, there were times where I would go days without showering because mum and dad would say we don't have any water.
Yeah.
Like the only water we had was to drink, and
Wet
even
wipes? Did you just do the wet wipes?
So we
shower?
had a swimming pool. So my parents would say, just jump in the pool as your bath. The point where we would have to get buckets of water out of the pool to be able to flush the toilets because we didn't have water, right? So, I mean, I always grew up with this like one shower a day is plenty.
Yeah,
so
fair
anyway,
enough.
but going back, like I'm not superstitious. I know there's heaps of athletes who are who are incredibly superstitious. Michael Jordan was one. Serena Williams,
I'm definitely not
one.
superstitious.
So as for me personally, no, I'm not. I kind of, and even doing what I just said that I do, I don't even feel like that's superstitious. It's just kind of, almost like if you had a big important job interview, I'm just taking those extra steps outside of my daily routine to be extra prepared.
Yeah.
But
I do something similar like the night before, even if my nails are short, I always cut my nails, like, get everything ready, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And then the gi is a big one. So I only have 2 gis.
Which is not enough.
No way. And this is what I want to talk about. One of them is like the thick black gi.
Yeah.
And it's quite heavy and I don't really like competing in it because it's too much material for my opponent to grab. And it's a bit thicker. It's a thicker make. And then the other one is a more competition gi. It's a lot lighter, but I've somehow ruined that gi already. I've only had it like a year.
It's because you train a lot, bro. It's good.
It's all like crumpled. It looks like it's, it looks like shit, right? And so do you think that someone should get a separate gi just for competing? Because I'm thinking about getting another one.
If you have the luxury, I mean, when I was going through my lower belts and I competed a lot, I did have a gi that I didn't use it specifically for competition because I didn't want that gi to feel really foreign, right? Like I would put it on to compete and be like, oh man, this gi feels weird. But like I would rarely use it in the gym because it was my competition gi, but I would still use it every now and again in the gym
to be comfortable in it.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's the same when people, like you said this to me early on, and I think we mentioned in a podcast about hygiene at some point, where it was news to me that like people that wear rash guards when they train underneath their gi, I never do that, and it's because I don't want to feel weird when I compete. And you pointed that out. You want to train how you compete, so I never wear a rash guard.
Because for those who don't know, you're not allowed to wear a rash guard under your gi when you compete. And girls can, for obvious reasons.
Yes.
But yeah, you can't for guys. So, I mean, yeah, I'm the same as you. I don't train with a rash guard under my gi. And when I do, for random reasons, like sometimes I do if I've gone back to back teaching a no-gi class into a gi class, I'll just chuck my gi on.
I do the same.
But then like it feels weird, you know? So if all of a sudden I, you know, had to compete with a rash guard under my gi, I would be like, this feels weird because I'm so used to not having it.
Exactly.
I also like the feel of the gi on my skin.
Yeah.
Got to get that gi burn, bro. So
rash.
To answer your question as, no, not superstitious, no special underwear.
You do have routines.
Next episode, he's probably going to send in, and can you send me a photo of you in your underwear?
You're a creeper.
No, just got my routine as.
Okay, cool. So question number 2. Now, this is a bit of a combined question. We had multiple people submit a very similar question, so we sort of wrapped it up into one, and it's all about self-defense. So basically, the question goes, have you ever been in a fight? And a second part of that question is, do you think that striking or kickboxing or other forms of martial art are important to round off your skills for self-defense, or is pure jiu-jitsu enough?
I'll just glaze over this one quickly because we did on episode 13. 13?
Yep, 13.
Yeah, episode 13 was literally titled, Does Jiu-Jitsu Actually Work as Self-Defense? So we spoke a lot about it in that episode, but long story short, Jiu-Jitsu is more than capable of being a self-defense martial art. Do you need to learn striking to facilitate your ability in self-defense? I don't think so, but like, would it hurt to? Not at all.
Yeah, absolutely not.
But, you know, if you're really interested in an in-depth answer to that question, listen to that episode because, you know, we go into things about, you know, well, what if your only option, like what if your only skill set is striking and then the person you're having an altercation with is a female or
your uncle,
he's a family member who's had too much to drink and you don't want to roundhouse kick them in the head, you know?
Drop them.
But in terms of me personally, I probably mentioned in that episode my street fight experience, I've only been in 2, and they're kind of 2 opposite situations because one was when I trained striking and then the other was when I trained jiu-jitsu. But I mean, I kind of don't put myself in situations where I get into street fights, but one was me, my wife and my brother against like 15 or 20 dudes.
Yeah.
Well, not against, I shouldn't say against, but
Were you backed up into a corner?
We're on a tram. Yeah, we got stuck in a corner and and it wasn't even like a street fight. It was just like, what could we do? It was kind of, I had my wife hugged under one of my arms and my other arm was just like protecting my head and we were just getting railed on by like 20 dudes. Like we couldn't do anything. And then the other was,
when you were at that party on New Year's.
It was at a party and it was essentially a woman, right? So, what was I going to do? Punch her? Of course not. So I just managed to hold on to her in a rear naked choke position, but not choking her until the situation diffused. But like long story short, listen to episode 13. But yes, jiu-jitsu is more than capable as a self-defense martial art. And I mean, if you have the liberty to learn striking as well, cool. But if you have to choose one, I mean, I'm going to, obviously I'm biased, but I'm going to go with jiu-jitsu or any grappling martial art because the perfect example is, like we said, what if you're in a situation where the person is a woman or a family member or, you know, or maybe someone who has, you know, is on drugs or whatever, but it's a situation where you need to control them, but you don't want to hurt them.
Yeah, like
if you
permanently damage them or potentially kill them. Like if you punch someone on the street and they hit the deck, like you could fucking kill them.
You could, yeah. And you know, if your only tool set is striking, what are you going to do if the person you're in an altercation with is someone you don't want to punch or kick.
The only thing I would say, additional to, our previous conversation on it, is the only time I would prefer to have an equivalent skill set in striking. Like, say, for example, if I could only choose jiu-jitsu or striking, the only time I'd want striking is if there was like 2 or 3 attackers and, you're painted into a corner or whatever. That's the only time that striking would be better, in my opinion.
I get that, but you could also, you could counter argue that if you're a grappler, your ability to not be like, let's say there's 3 dudes, chances are one of them might like want to hold you down while the other or hits you or whatnot. Yeah. If you're a grappler, you could argue that your ability to not get like pinned down or held, by those one of the attackers is going to be better. So your ability to kind of like be like, no, and shut it all down and then run away or whatever might be better. So I mean, I
was more thinking like if I was like a kickboxer,
you're more thinking like, more thinking like Kung Fu Hustle. And like, watch out, knockout, instant one punch knockout.
Boom, boom, boom. Yeah, which wouldn't really happen. Like I've seen a video on YouTube. There's this YouTuber. I'm pretty sure he fights in 1FC. He's a MMA fighter, and he, just as a bit of fun, he got his 2 friends that are non-trained to come at him at the same time. Yeah. And it's not like he knocked them all. Like, yeah, they're wearing gloves, but it's not like he knocked them all out instantly. Like, he was still having a circle around and get space, and there's only 2 of them. Yeah, man. So like it's not as simple as just wham bam, I win.
I mean, yeah, it can be. You see YouTube videos of people just getting king hit and knocked out, and where you think like, man, that dude would have died when his head hit the concrete. But then you also see, in my first street fight situation, I told the story, like I trained Muay Thai at the time. The guy king hit me, didn't knock me out. I then kneed him in the head, didn't knock him out.
And then he got jumped.
Yeah, and then got jumped by all the other dudes. Yeah. Like, so it can go either way, right? It can be an instant KO, but then you can have people that get hit incredibly hard and with adrenaline and stuff. So but I mean, you would instantly Kung Fu Hustle knock them out. But that's you.
So there's a super viral video that just comes to my mind, and I'm not sure if you've seen it, but I've seen it so many times it always resurfaces on the internet. And I'm pretty sure, just based on what they're wearing and how old it was, I'm pretty sure it's in like Russia or maybe the UK or something like that. And there's this guy walking down the street. I don't even know why they were being filmed, but there was this guy walking down the street with his girlfriend, and there was these 2 guys sort of having a heated argument. I think that's why it was being filmed, because whoever was filming it thought the 2 guys were going to fight. Right. And one of them just like sort of looks over as this man and his girlfriend are walking past and just swings and smacks the girl in the face out of nowhere for no reason. Like he's having an argument with this other dude, just hits fully intentionally, just smacks this bystander for no reason. But the guy just goes full like Mike Tyson. The boyfriend just goes full Mike Tyson and knocks both of them out, just like with combos, with like hectic combos, and just like walks away. And the girlfriend's like trying to pull him, and he just fucks him up. It is such a satisfying video.
My favorite, the most satisfying sort of YouTube viral people getting knocked out videos are the ones where the gonna sound bad like the kids, but like
I love watching kids get hurt.
Is when the kid in school or whatever finally stands up to the bully.
The bully, David versus Goliath.
Yeah, like seeing bullies get shut down is the best. Bullies are the worst.
Classic one where there's that kid that power slams. Oh man, it's a bit old now, but
I think that was an Australian kid too, wasn't it?
Yeah, and they did like a 60 minutes, the shit
current affair.
They did a current affair thing, and they shouldn't have, because it didn't paint a good picture for either of the kids.
Yeah, didn't it make the bully out? Like the bully was all like worse. Crying, being all like,
so it made him look like a pussy, and you could tell that, he was clearly the bully. Like, it was not good for anyone involved.
Don't watch a current affair for quality journalism.
Yeah. Please don't. But basically for those, particularly our overseas listeners who may not have seen it, because it was pretty viral here in Australia, well, worldwide really.
I think it was worldwide,
It was featured on Joe Rogan, I think, at one point.
Was it?
Yeah.
If you just type in like
bully gets power slammed.
Yeah, power bombed or something like that. You'll find it.
Yeah, it was like a full WWE power bomb on this kid, and he just messes him up. Yeah. To be fair, the kid that power bombed the smaller guy, if you watch the video, you know what I'm talking about. he copped like 4 punches before he actually snapped.
Yeah.
He was copping it. Like,
Yeah.
oh man, it was pretty funny.
Anyway,
very satisfying.
Episode 13, self-defense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so we do have another question here. This one is from Rosh, and it's basically the question is: what do you think of slap jiu-jitsu competitions and combat jiu-jitsu and 10th Planet? So Rosh is a white belt that also trains at our gym. Just for context about Rosh, shout out to Rosh.
So yeah, slap jiu-jitsu or combat jiu-jitsu is like a type of jiu-jitsu that, I believe Eddie Bravo, the founder of 10th Planet, started, where it's kind of, it's essentially jiu-jitsu that you're allowed to open hand hit your opponent once they're downed. So there's no stand-up aspect to it. It's not like you can strike from standing, but once you're on the ground and rolling or doing jiu-jitsu, you can perform open hand slaps, I guess, with the strategy that people have to defend against getting hit in the head, and that opens up more submissions or whatever, right? What do I think of it? I mean, I've never done it, and would I ever do it? Not really. I mean, I did striking when I was younger. I did Muay Thai. I don't like getting hit in the head. I don't like getting punched, kicked, slapped anywhere, right? It's just not for me. And I'm actually find it really impressive, like people who train or fight MMA, because it takes a special type of person, or any striking, I should say, like anyone who competes in striking, it's hard, dude. Like it hurts. It hurts a lot, and I don't have that in me. But in terms of what do I think about it in general, I actually don't have a problem with it. I think it's a great way for people to kind of bridge that gap between jiu-jitsu and MMA, because it is very different when you put punches into grappling as well.
And we spoke about this in the self-defense episode as well.
Yeah, like it's a different animal, right? Like, and so the obvious one is in jiu-jitsu, close guard can be a great position, but when there's striking involved, it's not necessarily great because the guy on top can be dropping bombs. So I think it's a great way to bridge the gap for anyone who's, maybe you're thinking, I wonder if I would like MMA or something. You could try combat jiu-jitsu or slap jiu-jitsu, and you might realize that you're good at it, you love it, or you might realize like, well, this is terrible,
You're getting smashed.
Yeah, for me, it's not the sport I'm into, like again, there's self-defense aspects to jiu-jitsu. You can listen to it in episode 13, but it's not why I do jiu-jitsu. I'm into the sport of jiu-jitsu, right? And obviously MMA as a whole, you could argue, is the most well-rounded sport, like because
combat sport,
that puts you in the situation, what would you do if there were no rules? Obviously in sports that are regulated, you have to have rules, but even MMA, you could say, but in the street, I'm going to fish hook you, eye gouge you, kick you in the groin.
But are you,
right?
though?
Like,
are you? Like, if you were up against an MMA fighter, are you going to eye gouge me? Or am I going to knock you the fuck out? Like,
so, I mean, you could argue, MMA is the best all-rounded for that. But I mean, if that's why I got into this industry, I would do MMA. Like, it's not why I do it. I do the sport of jiu-jitsu, and I enjoy the sport of jiu-jitsu. It's like, for me, when people make that argument of like, but here I could actually punch you. It's kind of like me saying like, but like, in a game of tennis, I'm just going to like throw my racket at you and jump the fence and fly kick you. Like, I mean, it's like, but it's like, it's a different sport, bro.
Combat tennis.
Yeah, combat tennis.
I would watch combat tennis.
I would watch it. Let's have a game now.
Yeah.
Combat. However, if you're wanting to sort of get a bit more into real in terms of self-defense, you want to get a bit of a taste of what grappling is like with strikes.
Do MMA, I reckon.
Yeah. Well, do MMA, but combat jiu-jitsu or slap jiu-jitsu, it's a good taste of it. I don't necessarily find it super entertaining, like from a...
Well, I think that's why it was invented. I think the intention behind it was to bring more spectator elements to jiu-jitsu to make it more entertaining, because ADCC tried to do that with their aggressive rule sets, if you will, like the whole no points in the first half of the match. You can't pull guard, like you have to advance, all of those sort of things. But as time goes on, people game the system and it ends up being just
like any sport.
Yeah, exactly. It ends up just being regular,
So
jiu-jitsu at the end of it. I think the slap or combat jiu-jitsu was Eddie Bravo's attempt to take the ADCC rule sets and improve on them in terms of what a spectator would enjoy.
Yeah. I mean, I don't really find it that entertaining. If I wanted to watch grappling with slaps, I would just watch MMA.
Exactly what I was thinking,
yeah, sure, not every fight ends on the ground, but if I want there to be any striking element, then I want all the striking elements. I don't want to just watch the slapping. But in terms of does it serve a place? Yeah, I think in the gym it serves a place for anyone who's wanting to bridge that gap to MMA
because there's more emphasis on the jiu-jitsu with the combat jiu-jitsu. Like it's open hand slaps are okay, and I have seen like some fights where someone has won with the slapping element, but a lot of them are predominantly jiu-jitsu, like they're going for submissions.
Yeah. It's usually because it's open hand and there's no elbows and stuff. You're usually not getting a knockout with a so-called ground and pound slaps, right?
It's still getting fucked up. But like,
So it serves its place in between jiu-jitsu and MMA, but I don't find it entertaining as a spectator sport. I would prefer to just watch either pure jiu-jitsu or MMA.
Unfortunately, I have to agree. I don't think it really works as intended, but what I think really does work is karate combat. This is one thing I had written down. I wanted to mention karate combat. I just want to spread the good word.
This is how the conversation went off air. Kieran's like, have you heard of karate combat? I'm like, no. And I said, what is it? And you're like, it's like karate, but they're actually going for it. And I'm like, so like kickboxing? And he was like, yeah.
Dude, okay, so basically
but they're karate black belts.
They take karate black belts, they chuck them in like this dome so they can run up the walls and shit.
Oh, what? You didn't tell me that.
Yeah, they could like full run up the walls, like it's all padded. It's sick. And then I think it's Japanese or something because they have like, it's real weird. Like the crowd is like, real weird looking. I'm not judging Japanese. I'm just saying like it's
came
got a
across
weird,
slightly racist.
It's no. Like they're wearing like traditional Japanese garb and so it's got that vibe to it, right? I'm pretty sure. But it's very, very cool. Like I don't even do karate, don't have any intention. I kind of think that modern day karate is McDojo and kind of like lame, but there is like pretty hardcore karate out there. And this is an example of that. So they have like,
bit more.
they have gloves on. They're not like the small. What are they? 8-ounce gloves or smaller? The MMA ones, like 6'5".
There's 6 or 8. I think there might be 6. Are they 4? They're very light.
Yeah. So they're not quite as light as MMA gloves, but they're kind of like they kind of look like the Bellator gloves, but a tiny bit bigger. So
kind of like the
little bit bigger gloves.
The K1 gloves or something.
Yeah, I think so. I'm the devil. Too much detail. But basically the concept is karate black belts in this dome where they can run up the walls and they just fucking fight. Like it's just stand up, they're just kicking, like people get knocked the fuck out. Like it's sick. It is sick. I love karate combat.
Because regular karate's a bit, I mean,
lame.
God, it just happened in the Olympics.
Like points karate. It's fucking boring. Watch karate combat. That shit's sick.
Did we talk about it in the Olympic episode?
How the guy like
knocked out the other dude or knocked him down or whatever, but lost
because he punched too hard.
Or something.
That's
so
fucking
stupid.
That's so lame. That destroys the credibility of a sport, whereas karate combat boosts the credibility.
Yeah. It was like imagine if you're like a surfer and you lost a competition because they said, "Oh, you were in the barrel for too long."
Yeah, exactly.
You'd be like,
exactly.
"What?"
Exactly right. It's stupid. And the other sort of so basically the reason I'm bringing all this up is because like
you've quit jiu-jitsu.
I've quit jiu-jitsu. I'm doing karate and it's going to be karate combat. But like this is essentially shaped, in my opinion, by MMA and UFC being the largest MMA organization, really shining a light on spectator combat sport. And so other martial arts out there are trying to take their martial art and bring it into a spectator context. So that's what combat jiu-jitsu is trying to do. I think they've missed the mark a little bit.
There's heaps of them that do it. There's another one, I have no idea what it's called, but it's essentially full contact combat with weapons. Have you seen that one? So it's kind of, you know what kendo is, right?
No.
Kendo's the sword fighting, and they wear those really cool headgear with the metal grills.
I've seen those.
You know, it's like the Japanese version of fencing, I guess.
Oh, wow.
But it's like got all specific rules and everything. But there's these combat weapon competitions where people are fully kitted out in armor, but they've got like nunchucks and they've got like, you know, not swords that are sharp, obviously, right?
Like more blunt.
Yeah, but they've got all weapons and stuff trying to make it more, you know, entertaining. It's not, but
but unfortunately misses the mark. But karate combat, super entertaining. And another one that I think has been definitely, it's MMA, but team fighting where it's like 5-on-5. I personally don't think they're super entertaining. Only like as a novelty. If you're watching it for the first time, it's pretty interesting, but I wouldn't follow the sport. The reason I say that is because if you look at the individual fighters, some of them are actually quite shit. Like, I'm not gonna lie.
They're just like bodies.
Yeah, they're pretty much just filling the team. And I'm not saying I'd be able to take them on. Don't get me wrong, I'd get smashed by all of them. But if you put that individual in a, like, you know, an octagon, for example, or in the UFC, they'll just get pumped because it's not like the person that is joining up for team fighting isn't really, you know, a UFC prospect. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
And so yeah, if you sort of watch individual fights going on in team fighting, that you're like, oh, okay, that guy's just covering up and he's just getting pumped. But team fighting is pretty gnarly. Like it's pretty much whatever team can take one person down first, they win, because then it's like it becomes 2-on-1 and then they win, and then 3-on-1 and then it just, you know. But it's still pretty interesting.
If you do want a new combat sport to watch, instead of slap jiu-jitsu, just look up the slap competitions. They're hilarious.
Are they a combat sport, or are they like
I don't know, bro, but I wouldn't do it.
Oh, dude.
Man, if you haven't seen it, it's two dudes who just stand across from each other on a table and take turns slapping each other.
That's so dumb.
Dude, but it is dumb. But it's like, it's fun to watch in the same way that it's fun to watch someone fall over and fail, right? Like
it's pretty silly.
Dude, and they hit hard.
But the thing is
so intense. But I don't know what's going.
You wouldn't follow it though. You wouldn't have like, I wouldn't.
Especially because it's all in like Russian or something.
Yeah.
So I don't even know what they're talking about. But you just, dude, that's pretty intense.
But like, I think that's the problem. It's kind of like it's good for a novelty. When you see this like slap competition or a team fighting, it's good for a novelty. But personally,
but
I can't see myself watching
sport,
it. Yeah, I can't see myself following it, having my favorite athletes. But karate combat, on the other hand.
I just want to take a quick moment to talk about today's sponsor, Karate Combat.
It's on YouTube. It's free. Watch it. It's super entertaining. Oh my God. But I really like MMA as well. So fuck. All right. So, next question.
Moving on.
I'm getting the nod. Okay. So the next question, we actually have two questions that are really good. So we included both of them here. So shout out to Joey. We've mentioned him a few times on the show. He is a brown belt that trains at our gym. Very competent brown belt. And his first question, though, is should BJJ players be held to a standard of physical conditioning? And if so, should black belts be expected to uphold the same standard? I'm very interested to hear your response.
I think about this.
Yeah.
The short answer would be no, not at all. That'd be ridiculous. And I'll tell you why. Unless it's something, you know, that individual has some medical something to not allow them to do it because it's not safe for them, then of course you need to be able to tick certain marks. But I'll explain it with an analogy just for Joey, because I know he hates them. I mean, they don't need to be held to any physical standards other than, can they just physically do it? So the analogy I'm giving is, should a surfer be held to certain swimming standards? No, like they just need to be able to swim, right? But short of that, to be allowed to surf, you need to be able to swim 100 meters in X amount of seconds. It's irrelevant to how good of a surfer you can be, right?
But I could argue, in order to be a pro surfer, you need to be able to hold your breath for a certain amount of time, or like other things that are in your best interest for safety.
Yeah, of course. But I mean, that's no different to saying like, oh, if you want to be a professional jiu-jitsu athlete, you need to be able to do multiple 10-minute rounds without getting tired or something. I mean,
isn't that a level of physical conditioning though?
yeah, this question can be a bit ambiguous.
Yeah.
So I did, prior to recording this, I did ask Joey for clarification on the question because
That's cheating.
because I did want to know, did he mean in order to compete or in order to,
To be a black belt.
no, well, yeah, in order to progress, like, do you need to hit certain physical checkpoints in order to get your blue belt, purple belt? And he just meant in order to train, right?
Okay.
So slightly different question, right? Like if the question was,
Yeah, you could interpret it in order to get a purple belt. You need
to be able to do X, Y, Z.
Yeah,
but he just meant in order.
Agree.
He just meant in order to train. And I mean, as long as you can, use my analogy again, as long as you can swim, you should be allowed to learn how to surf,
And
right?
who is regulating this?
Exactly. And what if, and let's say there were standards and someone came in, they wanted to pick up jiu-jitsu because they've heard it's a great exercise and they want to lose weight. And from day one, you go, sorry, bro, you're too fat. You need to go away and you need to be able to run 5Ks in this amount of time. You need to be able to, touch your toes. You need to be able to do X amount of push-ups or, you need to have the mobility for a Cossack squat and go away, do all that. And then once you can do that, you're allowed to do jiu-jitsu.
I spoke about this.
Imagine if that were the case.
Yeah, I did talk about this exact thing, and I was actually making that argument. I was making for that argument, counter your position in a YouTube video.
Sorry, agreeing with me or
disagreeing with you? Like, oh man, like in my first couple months of training where I came in and I was like super fit and I was a bit arrogant. Like, let's be honest, I was a bit of an arrogant, white belt producing fucking videos, preaching my good word. Two other white belts, of course, but still. And I was basically saying that literally the quote from the video was, get fit to do jiu-jitsu, don't do jiu-jitsu to get fit. That's what I was pushing. Like you should train, do conditioning, do mobility, do cardio, do strength training in order to do jiu-jitsu better because it's a combat sport rather than joining jiu-jitsu in order to use it as a vehicle to get fit. I was counter arguing. And since I've released that video, I haven't done a follow-up video on it, but since I released that video, my opinion has changed.
Yeah, because I get where you're coming from.
But I think it excludes too many people. It alienates too many people.
Exactly.
It's too arrogant. It's basically a fit young dude coming into a sport for the first time and saying, you should be fit to do this because I am, so you should be fucking fit. Whereas for some people, it's a fun way to get fit. And by me saying that, I'm alienating them and I'm saying you're too fat to do jiu-jitsu.
Exactly.
And I know that's wrong now.
And I've mentioned a lot of times that people do jiu-jitsu for different reasons.
Exactly.
Some people don't do it at all for the combat aspect, for the fitness, for the social. Some people get into jiu-jitsu because their therapist mentioned it was a good way to deal with their anxiety.
Yeah.
And then you're going to turn around and tell that person that they're not physically competent to do the sport.
Yeah. And that's where my arrogance was, and I had my blinders on and I was looking at myself and not looking at the bigger picture.
Yeah. I mean, again, of course, there might be some people who are limited for safety reasons, but even then, they can still start their jiu-jitsu journey. Like let's say you got into jiu-jitsu as a way to lose weight and maybe you're not even fat, but you've got a bit of a belly, right? Chances are you're not going to be able to invert, right? Because even when you're fit, like when you started, you were already fit. You couldn't invert in the beginning because it's a new skill that you're learning.
Yeah, I literally took private lessons to learn how to
invert. If you
I'm not joking.
If you add on top of that, imagine you had a bit of a gut, it's going to be even harder, right?
Yeah.
So if someone started their jiu-jitsu journey like that, just, to say that they can't do it because they don't meet certain standards. No, like I
think that's arrogant. I think that I really do. And that's coming from someone that thought that. So
yeah. So, I mean, as a whole, I would,
in
in order just to train, I flat out disagree with there being standards that need to be met. Even moving forward, like, okay, if it's someone who just does it for a hobby, for fun, for the social aspect, whatever, if moving forward, let's imagine you're someone who wants to pursue jiu-jitsu as a career, as an instructor, you want to compete and all this stuff. Even then, like, are there certain standards that you should have to meet? I still don't think so. There are certain things that are going to help you a lot, but let's say, for example, if someone said that, one of the standards that you need is to be full splits flexible or something, it's like, well,
that would alienate.
Some people maybe can never reach that because they have whatever problem in their hip or something that doesn't allow them to go to that full range of motion, or let's say, for example, I was told that you have to have the wrist mobility to do, those push-ups you do on the back of your hand opposed to the palm of your hands. I broke my left wrist when I was a teenager from skateboarding. And when the doctors said it, they set the bones slightly off. So to this day, my wrist still aches a lot. And
Which
when
is it? Just for wrist locking purposes?
my left one. Yeah.
Okay, Roger.
And when I rotate it,
too, right?
my shoulders. Yeah. When I rotate it, it clicks.
Okay.
Maybe if I spent 2 years, could I get to that mobility?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not a doctor or a mobility specialist, but in general, the mobility in that wrist is terrible. We're talking, I broke that almost 20 years ago, and it's still bad. So to then imagine if I was then oh, bro, you're too bad. You're not allowed to do jiu-jitsu, or you're not allowed, you can't get your black belt because you can't do that.
This raises a better question. Well, not a better question. This raises another question in my mind is, okay, let's extrapolate this. We're saying that there isn't physical standards or there shouldn't be physical barriers, physical standards in front of people to progress in jiu-jitsu and to be a black belt. Right? Because being a black belt, we've held up on this pedestal. Okay. So what about other standards, like personal standards, i.e., do you have to have a certain amount of humility?
Yeah, for sure. I did want to lead into that, with Joey's question when he said, and should black belts be held to the same standards?
Yes.
So yeah, I don't think physical standards should be a thing, but yeah, as a black belt, you're someone that by default, even if you're not an instructor, by default, the lower belts look up to you to learn from you, and as to some extent, potentially a role model, especially if you teach kids classes and things like that. I mean, I find it a little cringy when you see black belt instructors who are okay, you don't have to be bloody Tia Toomey fit, for those who don't know, the Australian CrossFit girl who's a beast, right?
Yeah, the world's best female CrossFit athlete by a mile.
Yeah, you don't have to be, on Tia's level to be a black belt. But I mean, when you see black belts who are super out of shape and, don't even really train anymore or whatever, that I find a bit cringy. It's like when you walk into Fitness First and you see the personal trainers who look like Homer Simpson, and
don't get me started on PTs that are out of shape. Why would you go to a PT that is fat? I've seen those because being a PT myself, I've seen a lot of PTs in my life, and a lot of them are overweight. Now the argument can be made that you don't need to be fit to be a good instructor and a teacher of fitness. Yeah. It's the same as take boxing or something like that. You don't need to be the world's best boxer to be the world's best coach.
You've got to lead by some level of example, right?
Yeah.
But the thing that I guess the underlying reason why I don't think fitness standards should be part of jiu-jitsu, and don't get me wrong, it's not like there shouldn't be standards that you set for yourself, right? Especially if you're wanting to compete and whatever, because those things can make a difference. They can give you the edge in competition, right?
That's different because that's just going to reflect in your results.
Yes, but as an overall thing, why I don't think it should exist is because jiu-jitsu is so incredibly dynamic. There's a million different positions and techniques that don't require you to have whatever range of motion in your hips. But then there's positions that do. So if you don't have that range, you don't do those positions. Or if you want to do those positions, you got to work on that range.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. Rubber guard, for example. I can't do rubber guard.
Right.
Because I don't have the flexibility and the mobility to pull it off. But I know some people that are very successful with rubber guard. Does it mean that I can't progress because I can't do fucking rubber guard?
Yeah, and does it mean you can't become incredibly successful at jiu-jitsu? Of course not. It's not like a fundamental, oh, bro, you need to be able to do more than 1 minute of jiu-jitsu before puking.
That would be preferable. And I think like you said, as a point of personal pride and a point of progression, if you take jiu-jitsu seriously, and yeah, maybe it is a hobby, but you want to get good at it. You're one of those people that you want to be good at what you do, then yeah, strength conditioning, mobility is going to be important for that journey if you want to progress.
Yeah.
However, should there be a standard set, or should you not progress, i.e. like get promoted by your coach because you are overweight or something like that, then I suppose your coach's individual bias will come into it.
Yeah.
But
I think it's just too hard to set like to set flat standards because everyone
it's almost borderline discrimination.
Yeah, because everyone's body is so different.
Yeah.
And so even when you work with a coach, so I've worked with Joey for ages doing bulletproof for BJJ, you have as well. And even when I've been side by side with, so I used to go all the time with a student of mine, Jake, we would both go. And even though we were both doing the same sport and following the same program, even within that program, there were different little things that I would have to work on opposed to that Jake would have to work on because I have more mobility on something or he's stronger on one thing, right?
Yeah.
So even within the same program, two individuals, it's going to be different. Like everyone's different. And then when you add on top of that, the layers of jiu-jitsu that what I like to do in jiu-jitsu, maybe it's inverting, so I'm going to require way more hamstring flexibility and way more mobility in my back and neck.
What if, just as devil's advocate, what if the standards were like a base level, like really not low, but very like quite low, like floor standards? And maybe, because I'm just imagining what Joey would say here is maybe, say for example, in order to progress, you need to have achieved a white belt standard for basic movements, like touching your toes or doing X exercise or Y mobility movement.
If you think like that,
like then achievable for everyone.
Yeah, then you could kind of say yes, but really like for me, that's no different to the standards of saying, well, if you want to learn how to surf, you've got to be able to swim. Like it's just a given, right?
But is it a given?
I'm trying to think.
I
was trying to imagine someone learning to surf who doesn't know how to swim.
No, that unless you put like a life vest on, but I suppose it does get complicated.
But I think the fact that you had that change of opinion is how it should be. To think that someone can't even start to train because they don't meet certain standards, unless it's something like, dude,
I never said they shouldn't start, but I was pretty forceful in that. And at the end of the video, I did close out with saying, if you want to start jiu-jitsu, you definitely should regardless. However, you should also work on your fitness outside of jiu-jitsu.
Look, if someone walked into my gym and said, the doctor says if my heart rate hits 120, I may die, I would be like, maybe you shouldn't train jiu-jitsu.
That's actually a good point, because we have something called a PAR-Q form in the PT industry, which basically is a health assessment to say, like, are there any red flags? Because legally a PT needs to do a health clearance of each of their clients before they take them on board. We're not doctors, but it's a very basic questionnaire. And if they like reach a certain score, don't pass the health assessment set by the government that we have to do, then we need a referral from a doctor to say they can do it or what limitations they have. Do you have something like that for jiu-jitsu?
From my understanding, and I would assume it would change depending where you are in the world. No, it's really just about, you just have to make sure you tick the certain boxes that your public liability insurance requires you to tick. And really it's just a pretty generic waiver form.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
There's nothing, I don't know, I'm not going to
put you on the spot here with a very complex sort of question.
I'm not going to, I don't know enough.
I don't think there is.
Answer that in depth.
Yeah, I don't. Even in other sports like football or soccer or whatever, there's not, which is interesting, because I must say, as someone that does consider themselves fairly fit, the toughest sessions I've ever had are jiu-jitsu sessions.
Yeah, super tough
by far.
Yeah,
by far. So that's very interesting, I find.
So yeah, just to summarize that question, I would just say, no. As long as you can swim, you can surf. And moving forward, progressing, definitely all those sort of standards catered to you as an individual, definitely going to
So
help you.
I don't want to like extend this too much, but I have a follow-up question to that. What do you think about personal standards, as in like the quality of someone as a person, ignoring physical standards for a moment, the quality of someone as a person in their self-conduct outside the gym? Should there be standards for black belts? Like take, for example, like the conduct of, I don't know, Maki Musameshi or whoever. Maybe don't use maybe let's steer away from people in the spotlight because that's a different question altogether. But just your everyday average, straight out of whatever gym from wherever black belt, should they conduct themselves at a higher standard as a person?
I think so.
But should they be held to a standard? So, for example,
Yeah.
if you had a black belt under you and they, I don't know, got caught drink driving or something, or maybe a more relevant example, maybe they got charged with assault, would you kick them out of your gym or like hold them to that? Hold them to that?
I'd be pretty livid. I think so, because it's like ignoring people, the famous jiu-jitsu fighters.
Yeah,
like,
let's steer away from that.
You know, once you get a black belt and you're by default in this sort of position of authority and respect and people look up to you, man, you know, I believe you have to act accordingly, you know, and that's the way I was taught as well. And, you know, I could feel if I had a student who was just as an athlete exceptional but as a person terrible, I don't know if I would ever give them that black belt.
That's
a
good question.
Like it's something, you know, and maybe this is the cultural, traditional side of martial arts as a whole coming into it.
Yeah.
Because you don't have to be if we're talking just like as an athlete, you don't have to be a good person. A lot of the most successful athletes in sport are horrible people and incredibly selfish and just absolute pricks. Yeah. Right. Which, you know, is fine, you know, because you kind of do have to be a bit selfish in sport. In a lot of things in life, if you're making it into that 1%, it usually requires a whole lot of all about me. Right. But yeah, if you're just talking about a general black belt, would I give a black belt to someone who I didn't think could operate as a role model? I don't think I would. You know, it's something special, and that's how I came up. That's what Fabio imprinted on me. You know, and he's talked about privately with me a couple of students who he regrets giving black belts to. You know, and it's not like you can then take it back. So, yeah, I think they should be held to a higher standard. I'm not saying I mean, God, they're not a priest or something. It's not like you can't then, you know, oh, bro, that black, I saw him drinking a beer or whatever. Like, man, you're still just people.
A bit of common sense is required.
Yeah, but I mean.
But perhaps that's the way Joey feels about the fitness and the mobility side of things, maybe. Could
be, yeah. But
I'm putting words in his mouth here. I'm not sure, but yeah.
Joey's sitting there and he's like, that's not what I meant.
Yeah, that's not what I meant. Shut up, you fucking white belt. Get back on the mats. Fucking, yeah. Okay, so second question from Joey. This is the second part to the question. We're told to leave our ego at the door. Is this actually possible? And is it actually good advice?
Ego at the door. It's a very common phrase that you hear, leave your ego at the door, leave your ego at home. I think ego in the negative connotations of the word, for sure. I agree with that. However, there's a line between your ego being a problem and your competitiveness being a problem. And I think anyone who continues to train jiu-jitsu, even if you don't compete, you have some level of competitiveness in you, because even when you just have a friendly role in the gym, you're competing against your partner and simultaneously against yourself. You could get a bit like deeper and think like, oh, you're your own opponent or whatever, but you're competing against someone, and you know, it could just be friendly competition. So I think having competitiveness is, if you want to like get good at jiu-jitsu, like you have to have it. But ego is kind of more of people think about it as a negative thing, right? You know,
Yeah.
and people often blur those lines of ego, arrogance, confidence, all those sort of things, right?
It's a bit of a dichotomy.
Yeah. So I think having if you just look at that phrase at face value, leave your ego at the door. Should you? Is it good advice? Yes, I think so. But you got to bring, you got to bring some confidence and your competitiveness, and being competitive and wanting to win doesn't mean you're egotistical, right?
Yeah.
Being confident and thinking you're going to win, it doesn't mean you're egotistical, right? It's like when, I often talk about when I'm competing and I have upcoming fights or whatever, it's part of fight psychology or sport psychology where I tell everyone and tell myself that I'm going to win and, man, I'm going to tap this dude in 20 seconds. It's just a way of, building that, but I'm trying to like gaslight myself, but it's not it's not my ego, right? Your ego in jiu-jitsu becomes a problem when that then starts to like bleed out and infect other people in the gym. Like you get tapped by a training partner and you chuck a massive wobbly in class, or,
I've heard online, particularly on Reddit and forums and, other people's YouTube videos telling stories, that it's actually a thing that sometimes people storm off the mats. Like something happens on the mats and they storm off. And I've had a friend of mine that saw it at another gym. I'm not going to name names at the gym, but he saw, pretty early on, being a white belt, that someone literally stormed off the mat. And I've never even, seen that or like I couldn't imagine that happening.
Yeah, I've never seen like the most heated altercations I've seen was only two. One was myself involved recently where it's not really important, but I just kind of had a disagreement with a really good friend of mine, like one of my best friends that we've known each other for years, but it was almost more of a friendship problem than an ego jiu-jitsu problem. And I didn't storm off the mats, but I was kind of done for the rest of the class. And I just kind of like sat down next to the class, next to the mat, sorry. I also saw in Brazil once two guys pretty much deteriorate into like a punch on.
Jeez. They were just trying to pioneer slap jiu-jitsu. That's all that was happening.
But it was sort of, I only ever saw it once in 5 years, and it was in competition class. And this was at Alliance is still a very high successful jiu-jitsu team, just won the Pan Ams. However, this was like at the peak of the time in Brazil where like a lot of the current world champions were training there. And it was leading up to Worlds or something, and things just got out of hand. In that environment of competition class as well is so intense. And even though they're your training partners, you're essentially when you high five knuckles to roll, like it may as well be a competition roll. That's just almost a blank canvas person in front of you. It doesn't matter that they're your training partner and friend. So, I saw that get heated once. That's when ego becomes a problem, right? When you allow that to sort of stifle your own progression and infect other people and act inappropriately, right? Getting a little bit upset because you got tapped or whatever is not really an issue as long as you don't project that. I'll use Joey as an example. Joey, very competent brown belt, more than capable of submitting me. And when he submits me, I get like down on myself, right? And then but it's the competitor in me. But then I'll want to go back and train again, and then I'll want to win, but it's not like an ego thing.
Yeah, you're not going to chuck a wobbly and walk out or like try and hurt him in return.
Exactly. Yeah, you see that too. I've had that, and I've trained with heaps of people like that.
I have as well.
Yeah. Yeah, right? In 9 short months, you might...
12.
Well, I'm ignoring the lockdown.
Don't take away my months.
Yeah, don't take away my lockdown months.
Dude, this podcast counts. I expect this to credit against.
I pull out a blue belt. Yeah.
Don't tease me.
But yeah, like I've had that where you submit someone or you...
And then they come at you like a crazy person.
Yeah. Or and they try hurt you. Or sometimes it's not even submit them. You just almost pass them or something.
There's some training partners that I know they're going to do that. So after the first time I submit them in a roll or whatever, if I am able to, I just automatically go guard. And because I know they're just going to go nuts, I'll let them just
Yeah,
spaz
but
out.
you know, like I also, what you should do is, because I've trained with heaps of people like that, I use it as a way to kind of like fight fire with fire. If someone wants to act like that with me, I want to show them just how big the difference is. And what I
So
mean,
you go back and dominate it again.
yeah. So
Yeah,
if you train with one of those people that once you submit them,
Yeah.
they kind of come at you with that, all right, it's on.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you smash them again
Yep.
when they're coming at you with that it's on mentality.
gotta
It's a
flip
way
it.
it's a way of kind of just going,
Big dogging.
yeah, bro. And just
You got to leave that ego at the door.
yeah,
You
really,
fucking-
really shut. But that's not ego. That's
Yeah,
just
yeah,
me
yeah.
kind of like shutting that
Yeah.
shit down.
Yeah,
you
I
know?
think I'll take that approach.
And I don't actually, to be honest, I never even, when I would do that with my training partners, I never even did it with the mentality of like, yeah, take that. You know, it was more just cementing my confidence in my own ability in jiu-jitsu, that I was like, opposed to thinking, oh man, like I managed to submit Kieren. It was like, no man, like I beat him again when he came with everything.
Yeah,
like, yeah,
got you.
You know,
Got you.
like,
I'm gonna
because
do that.
I've spoke a lot about you have to use your training partners as your benchmark, and that's how you progress against the same training partners, you know, or, you know, I keep passing Joey's X guard. Oh, now all of a sudden Joey's constantly sweeping me from X guard, and then I have to progress more. Okay, I'm back to passing his X guard. So you set little challenges with individual training partners. So, you know, if my challenge is, you know, submit Kieren, but it's still at a stage where it's like, oh, I submit Kieren, but then when he comes at me and turns it on, he still beats me, you know, but then my next little goal might be submit Kieren and then beat him again when he really comes at me, you know? So I always did it with that mentality, but I guess it also has the byproduct of shutting down someone who has that sort of tendency to get pissed off and then really come at you. And that's an ego problem, you know, opposed to a competitive attitude, you know? And again, Joey and I are a great example. Joey and I can have super hard rolls, but then the second the timer stops, like there's no animosity. Right? There's none at all, regardless of who won or lost or where we ended up. Like we can go super hard and have zero tension once the timer stops.
Yeah.
You know, and that
makes sense.
And that's great.
That's a great training.
And I think that's Joey and I bringing our competitiveness,
rather than your ego.
Rather than our egos.
I think I've experienced a bit of sometimes I should say, where my ego has not been a problem, but the inklings of it is starting to, you know, present a potential problem, and that's with tapping, like holding out a little bit too long.
The amount of times in classes I've had to say to Kieren, I've looked over and he's, you know, like wincing and holding his elbow, and I'm like, fuck, bro,
just tap.
You got to tap. Like,
I'll
say it now because you need to hear it again, but I'll say it for everyone else. Sometimes like you're having a really competitive role, whether you're just in comp mode, comp prep, or against that training partner where any given day, any given role, either one of you can win. So it's that partner where it's super close. Sometimes it's worth digging real deep and seeing how far it can go, you know? So, and I've been guilty of it. There's been times where I've dug really deep and I tapped too late on that particular submission, and I've then got a sore elbow for a month. Or sometimes, you know, I escape that armbar because I dug really deep and have a sore elbow for a month. And, you know, in hindsight, you're always like, oh, I should have tapped. I've screwed my elbow. But, you know, sometimes you want to see how far you can push that, because in training, is it worth the price? No, because it screws you up for being able to train the following days. But developing that skill for competition can be priceless, right? So, for example, in training, if someone said to me, okay, do you want to win this role, but the cost is you'll have a sore elbow for 4 weeks? I would say, well, no, I'm just training. But if you said, oh, do you want to win this competition, but the cost will be a sore elbow for 4 weeks? I'll be like, yeah, of course, it's worth it. Like I'll fight and get out of that armbar to win the match, right? Because you're competing. But how do you know if you can do that if you never do it in the gym? So sometimes you do have to see how deep you can dig, but the problem is you do it every time, and you can't do it on the regular because you just get hurt, you know. So you do it sometimes, but not all the time. And that's why I'm always look over and you're wincing and you're like, duh. And I'm like, bro, just tap, man.
Just
like
tap your pussy.
not every time, bro.
Yeah.
You can't dig that deep every time.
Yeah.
It hurts too much. Or you end up walking around like the meows.
Yeah, all crippled and shit. Yeah.
But yeah, that's it's your ego. Leave it at the door, bro.
Yeah. But no, I think it is good advice when you look at it through the lens of the negative side of ego and how ego can affect you with not tapping, with like hurting someone or being a fucking bitch. Really, I think doing things like storming off the mat or like walking out of the gym because you're like a blue belt, they got tapped by a white belt or they did something.
Oh God, he's so inappropriate.
Oh man, that is. I think at that point, particularly, it depends on what belt we're talking. But at that point, you have to question if they're wearing the right color, if you know what I mean, if they have the right belt on. And that links back to your original point of would you give a black belt to someone that you don't think is a good person? And you're like, probably not. I think I have to agree. I'm a white belt, but if just in general, that's my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, I'm just thinking about what you said. Like I've seen that. There was this one guy in Brazil who I don't know did he ever get his purple belt? I don't know. I don't even know if he still trains, but he was a blue belt forever. And I know for a fact one of the reasons he was, because I've had this conversation with Fabio, was because of the way he carried himself. And this was back when Fabio kind of only did like 1 or 2 gradings a year, which a lot of gyms still do that, follow that sort of method and style. For those who don't know, I don't.
I was about to ask for you. I have no idea. I haven't been around long enough to really see a full like cycle yet.
Full cycle, yeah. I don't. Like I'll often do like an end of year class / I mean, maybe there's some belts that get given out that I wait until that end of year, but it's more of just like an end of year / Christmas / big class get together or whatever. But no, like I grade each student individually because, they're all on their own individual journey, right? But back then, and Fabio does now as well, but previously it was just 1 or 2 gradings a year. So, and if you were out of town for that particular grading, tough luck, wait another 6 months or 12 months. Yeah. So it was really like that. And just because of the way this guy carried himself, I think he did eventually get his purple belt, but like probably 3 or 4 years later than he should have. And because it got to the point where there would be a grading and he wouldn't get his purple belt. And man, he would pretty much make a massive scene and swear and walk out, fuck, I'm out of here, and like storm out of the gym in the middle of a grading.
And wonders why he doesn't get his belt.
Yeah. And so there's something to be said as well. Like you said, you would question if someone did something inappropriate, you'd question whether they've got the correct belt. Yeah. And so super important the way you carry yourself.
But that's something that's unique about jiu-jitsu, because if you look at something like, I don't know, something that doesn't have a hierarchy structure or a grading system, like, but it's still a sport, like maybe rugby or maybe like tennis. I'm not quite sure. Take like football or rugby, for example. I'm not sure if someone would be quote held back from the like being in the first grade or something like that, if they're not conducting themselves appropriately. I'm not talking professional like in the limelight. I'm talking about like just a general club. But I'm not sure if they have the same problem. If someone like is a superstar athlete but is a bit of a dick to his friends or whatever, then the coaches probably don't care. But in jiu-jitsu, it's different.
Yeah, I think probably because jiu-jitsu has such a clear, literal color system to show your rank within the sport.
Yeah.
Like I said at the start, by default, when you're a black belt or whatever higher belt, by default, people look up to you. Whether they look at you as a role model or not is another thing, but they instantly, like, they may have never met you before, but they look and go, oh, that dude's got a purple belt, so he knows more than me, he's been training longer.
It's immediate authority.
Yeah. So, I believe your behavior has to reflect that.
Okay, well, I think that this was pretty successful Q&A. We got some really, really good questions.
I like that. It was a good one.
Yeah, that have come through. So thank you to everyone that submitted the questions.
Yep, keep them coming.
And if you want your question read out on the next Q&A, Again, like I said at the start of the episode, jump over to our Instagram, and that's where you can submit a question. Just go into our link tree and you'll be able to find the question form there. Again, our Instagram.
If you're like me, over 30, and you're like, what the hell's a link tree? You can even just message us on Instagram.
Yeah, or you could just do that. That works for us as well.
But yeah, it's all there. It's all on Instagram.
And our Instagram handle is @BeyondJujitsu_podcast. And if you want to support the show, consider jumping over to our Patreon. You can find that in our link tree as well, or just search Beyond Jiu Jitsu Podcast on Patreon.
Until next time.
Thanks for listening.